terrifying. The last Rapture sign just appeared. Yes, you heard that right. It's like a real-life blockbuster unfolding before our eyes. Imagine the world on the brink of a monumental event, with signs appearing that could signal the end of days. It's the ultimate cliffhanger, and we're about to unravel the mystery together. So let's dive into this video today to know what's happening, what it means, and what might come next. Israel in the end times. I will bring you back to your land, says Ezekiel 36:24. This means that people will return to their original homelands, leaving other countries and returning home. Zechariah 12:2-3 describes Jerusalem's future importance. It will be like a cup that dips and confuses people. Many nations will gather against it, but Jerusalem will be strong like a rock. Anyone who tries to harm it will only hurt themselves. The land of Israel is very important for Judaism, Christianity, and Islam. Throughout history, many different groups of people have lived there, like the Assyrians, Babylonians, ancient Israelites, and Canaanites. It's a place where civilization started and grew, and it holds the stories and traditions of many cultures. Around 3,000 years ago, 1000 BC, the tribes of Israel joined together under King Saul, then King David, and King Solomon. Solomon built a special place to worship God called the First Temple around 1000 BC. Later on, the kingdom split into two parts. The Assyrians took over the northern kingdom in 722 BC. Then, the Babylonians captured the southern kingdom in 586 BC, destroying the First Temple. When the Persians defeated the Babylonians, they allowed Jewish people who had been exiled to return and rebuild their temple. This marked the start of the Second Temple period. Around 2,000 years ago, Christianity began in the same area as Jesus of Nazareth. But in 70 CE, the Romans destroyed the Second Temple during a war between the Jewish people and the Romans. These events greatly impacted the Jewish people's cultural, religious, and historical identity and impacted the wider world. In the 1920s and 1930s, many European Jews moved to Palestine, seeking safety from anti-Semitism. This movement, called Aliyah, changed the area's population. Jewish settlers started agricultural communities like kibbutzim and moshevim. However, tensions grew between Jewish and Arab communities because they both wanted control of the land. Their different goals for the region led to violent conflicts. After the Second World War, Jewish people were scattered everywhere. But in 1948, something amazing happened. David Ben-Gurion, a Jewish leader, declared the birth of Israel. This was like a dream coming true, just as ancient writings in the Bible had foretold in books like Ezekiel, Jeremiah, and Isaiah, which spoke of Israel's return. In chapter 36:24, Ezekiel predicted, "I will gather you from all countries and bring you back to your land." This meant bringing back Jewish people who were scattered around the world, making them special to God. In chapter 30, Jeremiah comforted the people with words from God, assuring them of their return from captivity to their ancestors' land. These prophecies spoke of gathering the Jewish people from afar and returning them to the land promised by God. If you look at Israel today, it's like proof that these prophecies came true. In ancient texts, the land promised to the Jewish people is now their home. It's a real-life confirmation that God's promises endure and fulfill ancient predictions. Even though the weather in Israel can be harsh and the land wasn't very fertile initially, they now grow many crops. They believe in another promise from Zechariah 8:12, which said the land would produce crops and receive dew from the heavens. These promises from old writings aren't just tales of the past, they're still unfolding today. Another prophecy from Zechariah in chapter 12 talks about Jerusalem becoming incredibly strong, almost unmovable, even when nations try to oppose it. What is Israel now? When we look at Israel today, we see that ancient predictions from long ago are coming true. The land promised to the Jewish people is now their home, showing us that it lasts a very long time when God promises something. The return of the Jewish people to their homeland fulfills these old predictions. But there's even more to this remarkable story. Today, Israel deals with tough weather. It's hot and dry, and the land isn't naturally fertile. But something incredible is happening. Despite the odds, the people of Israel are growing abundant crops from land that seemed barren. Even the trees in Israel produce more than trees in other places like Russia. How do they achieve this? They believe in a promise from the Bible, specifically from Zechariah chapter 8, verse 12. It says, "The seed will grow well, the vine will yield its fruit, the ground will produce its crops, and the heavens will drop their dew." This means they trust that God will grow their crops even in tough conditions. It might sound surprising, but we can see God's promises happening right before us. It's fascinating to witness the fulfillment of these ancient predictions. One of these predictions, by a person named Zechariah, is related to current political events in the Middle East. In Zechariah's prediction in chapter 12, something significant is foretold. It says, "I am going to make Jerusalem a cup that sends all the surrounding peoples reeling. Judah will be besieged, as well as Jerusalem. On that day, when all the nations of the earth are gathered against her, I will make Jerusalem an immovable rock for all the nations. Anyone who tries to move it will hurt themselves." These words from the ancient prediction describe Jerusalem as a strong force that remains steadfast even when facing difficulties. Reconstruction of the Third Temple. Many people strongly desired to construct the Third Temple in Jerusalem, seeing it as more significant than the previous destroyed temples. Although it hasn't been built yet, it holds immense importance in Judaism. The Third Temple in Jerusalem holds immense significance for many, especially Orthodox Jews. It's regarded as more special than the temples of old that no longer stand. Even though it's yet to be built, there's much anticipation surrounding it. For Orthodox Jews, it's not just a structure, it's a profoundly meaningful symbol of holiness and a sacred place for prayer. Since 1987, a group known as the Temple Movement has been preparing for the construction of the Third Temple, slowly working towards this goal in the 21st century. While many in modern Israel and worldwide aren't deeply religious, Orthodox Jews take this matter seriously, viewing it as a spiritual duty and excluding non-religious individuals from involvement. They are the ones who revived the Sanhedrin, a religious group overseeing temple regulations to ensure the temple is rebuilt correctly. For Orthodox Jews, rebuilding the temple is essential as they believe it plays a crucial role in improving the world. They are convinced that the world can only progress with the reconstruction of the temple. Gershon Salomon, leading the Temple Mount Faithful, is actively working to rally support in Israel for rebuilding the temple. The group has organized protests at the temple site, created a special cornerstone for the Third Temple, and manufactured items for its use. According to Solomon, constructing the Third Temple is necessary to fulfill the destiny of the people mentioned in the Bible who live in the Holy Land. The Sanhedrin is responsible for temple affairs and prepares for temple services by engaging in activities such as planting a special tree with plants needed for the Third Temple. Speaking on behalf of the Sanhedrin, Rabbi Hillel Weiss highlights that the temple connected the land and God. Contrary to common beliefs associating sacrifices with animals and blood, many sacrifices involved plants that grew in Israel. Interestingly, the return of Israel to the Promised Land and the construction of the Third Temple align with biblical prophecies from prophets like Ezekiel and Isaiah, who spoke of God's promise to gather his people. There's a quote from Ezekiel in the Bible that says, "Then the nations will know that I, the Lord, make Israel holy when my sanctuary is among them forever." This signifies that when God's special place, the sanctuary, is with the Jewish people, it will be evident to everyone that Israel is special. Another quote from Isaiah says, "I will say to the north, give them up, and to the south, do not hold them back. Bring my sons from afar, and my daughters from the ends of the earth." This indicates God's desire for his sons and daughters worldwide to return to the Promised Land, creating a vast gathering from every corner. Although there's a belief that Yeshua serves in the true tabernacle in heaven, the desire to build the Third Temple isn't solely about constructing a physical building. It's seen as a dwelling place for God's special presence. A quote from the Bible says, Let them construct a sanctuary for me, that I may dwell among them." The prophet Ezekiel witnessed God's special presence leaving the old temple, but also foresaw its return and permanence in a new eternal home in Jerusalem. From ancient times, a wise Jewish philosopher stated that the Third Temple isn't just a repeat of history. It's a symbol affirming that God is always with his people, eternally. Therefore, building the Third Temple isn't merely about honoring the past. It's about demonstrating that God's presence is constant with his people. Arrival of red heifers. Recently, Israel received 5 red heifers from a Texas ranch, which many see as fulfilling a prophecy about building the Third Temple in Jerusalem. These young heifers, known for their entirely red color, are significant in Jewish law for purification rituals, especially for priests who might come into contact with the deceased. These special heifers, under a year old, are expected to remain completely red. If they do, they can be used to produce ashes, an essential element in Jewish purification customs. After a 7-day quarantine in Haifa, following Israeli Veterinary Authority rules, they will be relocated to 2 sites in Israel, one of which will be open to the public. They'll be taken care of until they reach 3 years old, the age when they can be sacrificed according to Jewish law to produce ashes. Bonei Israel, an organization comprising both Jews and Christians, played a crucial role in bringing these heifers to Israel. Byron Stinson, a Texas rancher and advisor for the organization, raised these cattle. Their arrival at Ben Gurion Airport was celebrated with a welcome ceremony attended by Temple Institute officials and other notable figures. In the Bible, the red heifer holds profound significance. Its ashes were traditionally used to purify the Israelites, as detailed in Numbers 19. Many interpret the appearance of a red heifer today as a sign of the imminent construction of the Third Temple and the awaited return of Christ. Traditionally, 9 red heifers have been sacrificed since Moses' time, with none since the destruction of the Second Temple. Rabbi Maimonides even taught that the Messiah himself would sacrifice the 10th red heifer. The arrival of these 5 flawless red heifers from Texas to Israel on September 15, 2022, is considered by many as a fulfillment of prophecy and a significant step toward building a new temple. The Mosaic Law specifies strict criteria for a red heifer. It must be without defect or blemish and never wear a yoke, Numbers 19:2. The process of sacrificing a red heifer involves unique rituals, symbolizing the sacrifice of Christ. Jesus, described as without blemish, was crucified outside Jerusalem, akin to the red heifer's sacrifice outside the camp. Just as the red heifer's ashes cleanse from contamination of death, Jesus' sacrifice purifies from the penalty and corruption of sin and death, a marriage in Temple Mount. In Jeremiah 33:11, a prophecy describes a joyful time marked by the voice of joy and the voice of gladness, symbolizing the happiness associated with the arrival of a future Messiah and the Third Temple. This prophecy has sparked a growing trend in Israel, where Jewish individuals visit the revered Temple Mount, seeing it as a sign of the Messiah's imminent coming. A couple from Rehovot and Tel Mond, Eitan Krantman and Coral Daisy Dean, recently got engaged on the Temple Mount, reflecting a practice gaining popularity among Jewish couples. They combined both stages of a traditional Jewish marriage, kiddushin, betrothal, and nisuin, wedding ceremony, under the chuppah. This emphasized the belief in humanity's creation in God's image and the establishment of an everlasting union. This significant event on the Temple Mount is linked to a verse from Jeremiah often recited at weddings. The verse foretells a time of joy and thanksgiving in the land. The Temple Mount includes historical gates for both bridegrooms and mourners, known as the Gate of Mercy. As more Jewish couples opt for the Temple Mount for their engagements, they see it as the fulfillment of ancient prophecies, such as Zechariah 8:20-22, which talks about people from various cities coming to Jerusalem to pray to the Lord. These occurrences are viewed as awe-inspiring and in line with biblical prophecies. Discovery of Pool of Siloam. The pool of Siloam, measuring 53 feet long, 18 feet wide, and 19 feet deep, was an important discovery. Skillfully made with natural rocks, it was sadly destroyed during Babylon's attack on Jerusalem and the Second Temple. But there's good news. It was rebuilt during Nehemiah's time and expanded under Herod the Great's rule. This pool was a place where poor and sick people sought healing, especially during the Feast of Tabernacles, celebrating the Israelites' freedom from Egypt. The Festival of Booths, or Sukkot, is a major event in Judaism, commemorating the Israelites' freedom and survival in the desert. People build temporary sukkahs like their ancestors' shelters, expressing gratitude to God and seeking rain. Sukkot is celebrated worldwide in Jewish communities. During Sukkot, a priest would draw water from the pool of Siloam in a golden pitcher, singing psalms joyfully. He then poured the water on the altar's west side, a ritual tied to Isaiah 12:3. Isaiah 12:3 states, "With joy you will draw water from the wells of salvation." Pouring water during Sukkot symbolized drawing joyful water from the wells of salvation. It was a happy ceremony during the Festival of Booths, with the Pool of Siloam playing a crucial role. Despite the original pool's destruction, its rebuilding allowed people to continue celebrating and finding joy in their traditions. On October 12th, a special ceremony called the water libation took place, resembling an ancient temple tradition. Led by special priests, Kohanim, and Levites, with musical instruments, they followed the old paths from the old city of Jerusalem to Shiloh, also known as Siloam Springs. The parade included chanting, dancing, and silver trumpets. With a golden jug filled with water from the Shiloh pool, they set up a model altar and tools on the mountain summit, continuing ancient temple traditions. The ceremony concluded with the rare priestly blessing and the Hakol ceremony, occurring once every 7 years. While the Torah doesn't explicitly mention the water ceremony, people consider it part of Moses' oral teachings, celebrating like a happy holiday. This ceremony, lasting 15 hours in the Old Temple, continued with celebrations all night until the next morning's temple service. Participants from worldwide came for Sukkot celebrations, making it a universal day of worship. In the last 6 days of Sukkot, a water ceremony and wine pouring took place during the morning service. Priests filled a flask with spring water, journeying from the temple to the Shiloh spring at the base of Mount Moriah. 2 priests poured wine and water into special holes for the ceremony on the stone altar in the temple's courtyard. The Shiloh pool, also known as Shalom in English and Silwan in Arabic, is of biblical importance and is believed to have been revived vividly after the building of the Third Temple. Pilgrims once started their journey to Jerusalem at this pool for biblical feasts, cleansing themselves before presenting sacrifices in the inner court of the Temple Mount. Discovered in 2004, ongoing exploration reveals its historical significance. According to the Babylonian Talmud, the year after the Shemitah, a special year, is considered auspicious for the Messiah's arrival. The Book of Amos prophecy suggests the return of the tribe of Israel from other nations. The Talmud discusses challenges before the Messiah comes, emphasizing the uncertain need for another physical temple. Instead, building a spiritual temple involves living a devoted life to God and preparing for potential end-time challenges. Recent end-time prophecy fulfilled by the Chinese president. China's President Xi Jinping has recently made statements that have garnered global attention. These statements signal a notable shift in China's foreign policy and are marked by the use of metaphors and warnings that have left many contemplating their implications. Xi's rhetoric has been particularly striking, employing metaphors and language associated with significant events, including wars and biblical prophecies. One instance that has drawn attention is Xi Jinping's reference to a scenario resembling Revelation 16:12-13, which describes the drying up of the great river Euphrates and the emergence of impure spirits resembling frogs. These biblical references evoke thoughts of apocalyptic battles, prompting questions about the true intentions behind Xi's words. One must examine China's evolving foreign policy and military posture to understand the context of Xi Jinping's statements. Historically, the Communist Party of China prioritized economic development and diplomacy over military confrontation. However, recent developments indicate a departure from this approach. In the current year, China has taken a more assertive stance globally, exemplified by threats made toward Australia, warnings issued regarding Taiwan, and even threats to shoot down an aircraft carrying a prominent U.S. representative visiting Taiwan. These actions signify a significant shift in China's willingness to engage in confrontations. Xi Jinping's directives to top national security officials to prepare for stormy seas underscore the gravity of the challenges China perceives on the horizon. The increased complexity and intensity of national security concerns and calls for worst-case scenario planning suggest a proactive approach to addressing potential threats. While it's essential not to overinterpret these statements, they reflect a growing sense of urgency within China's leadership. Recent reports reveal stringent directives issued by President Xi Jinping, emphasizing the need for accelerated upgrades to China's national security system and capabilities. This includes the development of a comprehensive risk surveillance and early warning system, enhanced national security education, and bolstered data and artificial intelligence security management. Xi Jinping's holistic approach to national security encompasses governance, economics, defense, culture, the environment, and cyberspace. This comprehensive strategy has led to the implementation of several laws and regulations to safeguard China against perceived threats. Furthermore, Xi Jinping's directives extend to China's formidable military capabilities, possessing the world's largest army. References to biblical prophecies, such as Revelation 16, have prompted speculation about the role of China's military in future conflicts. The Book of Revelation, written by the Apostle John, provides intriguing insights into future conflicts. One such depiction is of a massive army of 200 million soldiers emerging from the east. While interpretations vary, these prophetic visions leave many contemplating the significance of such immense forces and their potential role in historic battles. So what do you think of these last rapture signs? Comment below and subscribe for more.